I started more than a decade ago tracking the references to the word demon. These are creatures that are thought up by scientists in order to push the boundaries of their research, to think beyond what is known. Computers are a great example where I could see where these ideas, these imaginary beings drove research forward. How do we go from those very first robots to AI and try to figure out if scientists' own use of the term demon had something to do with what drives people to figure out what part of it can be made real. They're actually building these machines with these powers.
The people that make them are just like them. They're dead. That's why they don't know what's going on. I wish we could have went upstairs because they had the...
Well, we'll make it tomorrow.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, by the way, guys, it's Storos, and regardless of how much they try to convince you otherwise, there's a, kind of reason that they made that. He was crucified on a stake. That was the Roman word for it at the time. It's not a cross. Not what they're telling me, at least. Storos, that was the name.
Search demon is a fascinating creature termed in the 1980s, named after Berkeley philosopher John Searle. And the question was, could there be a little creature sitting inside your brain, intercepting synapses from neurons to neurons? And he would sit in the middle of two neurons, and you would have an idea or a synapse, and the demon would take it and send it to another neuron. But this demon would do exactly what you would anyway. So if that demon could exist, then that was used as an argument by some people to argue that you could have artificial intelligences that were no different from human biological intelligences, because you could have at the very basis of thought this very simple machinic action replicate a human being.
Make a point, because that's the Church of St. Nicholas, the building, I guess, right?
Yeah, here down the road.
Yeah, right down the road, Nicomedeans and all that stuff. But I'm wanting to make a point about Alexander the coppersmith, because what is that, Anna, right there?
Yeah, copper.
Can you tell me louder?
It's copper.
Copper, right?
Mm-hmm, copper.
All of it's copper. See, they talk about the silver shrines there at the temple of Ephesus. I've seen them tell things like that. Why don't they talk about the copper? Because that was the most common. And that's what a coppersmith would have done. Stuff like that, lies, right there to make money. Lie about the truth. Always about money. But you notice this? Copper, bronze.
Yeah, copper.
So see, if you were a coppersmith, they lie when they only talk about the silver shrines there at Ephesus, these hypocrites, because they know exactly, I think, or they should know, who Alexander the coppersmith is. I see that.
Look at this with cow head or bull head.
And why Alexander the coppersmith might have been such an enemy to the Apostle Paul. Hurting his business.
Making out a lot of pipes. Couple of them actually.
Yeah. See? The pagans always believed angels had wings. Mm-hmm. Angels don't have wings. That's an imaginary thing.
It's nowhere in the Bible.
It's nowhere. That's stuff man-made. Yeah? That's from people's imaginations. And that's why you're blind and you can't see anything, because you believe people that make stuff like this and tell you lies about the truth. We're trying to help you. This is what demons are, or gods. It's just imaginary things. It's not real. Matter of fact, you had a commandment against it for a reason. Not to make anything on heaven above in the likeness of it, or earth below, or under the sea.
And anything means anything.
And it means anything. And this is why, right here, because in the book of Romans, you're told, they changed the truth of the uncorruptible God into things like a man, things like birds, things like beasts, and creeping things. And that's those four things that sit around the real throne of God. There's a meaning to all of it. It's true. All copper, all brass.
Sometimes these demons are spelled with an A, it's daemon. So one of the person who wrote the Unix manual, one of the first computer languages, said it was by reference to Greek demons, daemons, because they did work behind the scenes. Whenever computers does automatic tasks that are done in the background, they're described as being done by computer demons.
So this would have been Purge, right here. This is from the theater in Purge. So we're going to show you what gods are. When Paul was talking about idols, and we know an idol is nothing, when he was talking about they worship to demons, he didn't mean something supernatural. He meant to people's imaginations. That's what the gods, little g, are. And it was high technology, and it took a lot of skill to make them. And they came from people's minds. As you can see right here. Purge on the antique road, which begins in Pergamum. Yeah, Pergamum altar, it begins. This is the other end. Remember, he talks to the people in Pergamum and tells them, they hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitan. This is what he's talking about. It's not talking about something supernatural. It's talking about St. Nicholas and people like that from Nicomedia. Fake, false, counterfeit religion. Just changed the gods that they were making with their hands. That's all. On the antique road, which began in Pergamum, and ends at Sidon. I understand. Owes its importance and development to Aksu, the Kestros River. Remember the river that dried up that we're telling you? It's Kestros.
Now they call it Aksu.
Aksu now, Kestros. That's why Purge disappeared. So this is where the river, and this is the river that Paul would have come up in a boat, right?
Yeah.
So it would have been, but it's not here anymore. Obviously the river's dried up and gone. But this would have been the major river that came up from the Mediterranean right into this area. Go ahead, Anna, walk that way, down that way. That would have been the main city gate right there. So this would have been the tower facing the river. I don't know, maybe they had docks over here. That's what the great river Euphrates, drying up on this whole earth, will do to the whole earth. It disappears, no more people. The river,
this is very interesting.
The river which is not in the harbor, the river which is not the same today, played an important role bringing rich alluvial soil, providing an important means of access to the city. It is known that St. Paul and his friends sailed from the harbor at Paphos on Cyprus to Purge. The integration of the city and the river is indicated by descriptions on coins. Something like a coppersmith might have been, during Augustus, because Augustus was he had already decided to go back on the bronze coins and remove the rarer elements out of them and start minting coins in copper. Copper was it was the most common coin after Caesar Augustus for the Roman Empire. Depictions on the coins, reliefs, and the depiction of the river god Kestros in a sculpture in a monumental nymphaeum at the base of the south hillside of the Acropolis. The most important citizen of Purge was the Apollonius of Purge, known for his many astronomical and geometrical and mathematical ability. That's what demons are. It's not the occult. isn't something supernatural. This is what we're trying to tell you. That's all it is. It's just hidden knowledge. Math, astronomy, geometry.
The very first architecture that was used to program these machines was called pandemonium. The word pandemonium refers to the fact that whenever one of these demons, these subroutines, would hit a match, it would holler and it would invoke another demon. That demon was tasked again with doing another very simple activity. But therefore you could have an architecture in which the computer was not following a predetermined path, but was by itself coming up with conclusions that we didn't know beforehand, and that became the foundation for early neural networks and for early artificial intelligence. In computer science, there are all these software demons that have been made by many, many people, that have been improved, and that are used for whenever we talk to Alexa or Siri. So it is a very important aspect of artificial intelligence to look at the history, see how it's actually made, how it is constructed, in order to try to get a hold of it.
The second most famous person who lived in Perge during the 2nd century AD was the philosopher Varus. Although many gods and goddesses, they should be little g's because that's what a demon is, an imaginary god, goddesses. This is what Paul would have been talking about when he said the Gentiles sacrificed to demons. He meant imaginary gods, things that people made up, smart people, right? Gods and goddesses were worshipped at Perge. Artemis, that's Diana. It's the same as in Ephesus. Held a special place and importance. Artemis, or Diana, whose roots are deep in ancient history, was called the Wanusa Priya, Queen of Perge. In the local language, she was the main goddess of the city. The cult of the goddess Artemis, or Diana, Pergia, spread to neighboring countries. She was even worshipped overseas. The Artemis Temple, often characterized by its beauty, size, and magnificent architecture, was built on top of a high hill. Again, spiritual wickedness in high places. That's what Satan is. It's not something in outer space. Built on a high hill, and its location remains today a mystery, because they destroyed it and moved it to a basilica down the road and just changed the religions. But right there on the hill, up from the city, that would have been the whole city right there, and then up on the hill would have been the temple to Diana, aka Artemis. This is what spiritual wickedness in high places means. It means this right here. Imaginary gods, aka demons in Greek, and the people that built things to worship them on mountains, high places. That is contrasted with God, Jesus Christ, coming down to Mount Sinai. That was real. That was done by God. These things are done by people's hands. That's what spiritual wickedness in high places means. Yeah. After the acceptance of Christianity by Constantine the Great, the first half of the 4th century AD, the new religion began to take place of the old polytheistic religion throughout the whole empire. The fact that Perge was represented by its metropolitan Kallinkos at the Council of Nicaea in 325 indicates that Christianity developed in Perge and Pamphylia in the same period. In fact, since the 1st century, when Christianity began to spread, Perge is known to have been an important city for Christians. St. Paul came to Perge twice, according to what we learn from the chapter of the Holy Bible entitled The Acts of the Apostles, written by Lucas in the 2nd half of the 1st century AD. Sailing from Paphos harbor in southern Cyprus, St. Paul came by ship to Perge via Kestros, that river that went through the Pisidian Antiochia, and then went on to Antalya, the city Antalya, Attalia, after delivering his sermon again in Perge on his return from Pisidian Antiochia. On the other hand, from the archaeological evidence, it is clear that Christianity was firmly established in Perge from the 5th or actually the 6th century AD onwards. 2 large basilicas, the remains of which are still in part standing today, were constructed during this period. One is called the Southern Basilica, dating from the 6th century AD, with its east walls and the apse still standing. Although the excavation is unfinished, the basilica has 3 naves and a narthex. The entrance of the cross-shaped basilica was provided from the east. Now again, this stuff here has nothing to do with the gospel, the good news that Paul came to bring to this place. And Paul came to this city because at that time it was a huge metropolitan area. Yeah. And he certainly did not come to establish a basilica here. What you see is up on that hill, that was spiritual wickedness in high places. That at the time of Paul's visit would have had the temple to Artemis or Diana. You read about the big temple to Artemis or Diana in Acts, where Paul actually goes to Ephesus that had the biggest in the area, but this was the temple to Artemis up here, or Diana, goddess of the moon. Apollo's sister, up here on the mountain. When the Bible says spiritual wickedness in high places, it's not talking about supernatural devils flying around in the sky above. It's talking about the men that build things like that up there on the mountain and tell lies to other people. See, the spiritual wickedness in high places just moved from there right over to here in about the 6th century AD, when they took what the Bible was saying and turned it into a lie. This is the remains of one of their lies. That's what they would have called a church, or a, I guess, kerkeron in the 6th century. It's not what the word ecclesia is in the Bible, that they've translated as church. The last bright period was during the Christian period in the 5th and 6th centuries AD. During this period, the city was a metropolitan center and many churches were constructed. The fact that the people of Perge showed no resistance to and welcomed Alexander the Great when he invaded the area in 333 BC. There's that number again. Was because they had no walls to protect the city.
Artificial intelligence is very frequently described as demonic. You know, Elon Musk says that it is like summoning the demon. So it's another of those aspects in the book, like atomic energy, where both scientists were literally using the term demon in their actual work, but also understanding these things as having, you know, potentially demonic consequences.
Computers can simulate life processes, such as the working of the human heart.
A coppersmith under Augustus would have had a lot of business making coins and shrines. Here are what demons are. It's just imaginary gods. When Paul was talking about sacrificing to idols, this is what he was talking about at that time. Here we go. Here's Artemis. This would have been the main goddess there, right? Would have been Diana. This is what they were worshiping. This would have been Diana in the Bible. It's Artemis. And this would have been her statue. She's missing a bow, an arrow, by the way. She's got a bow.
Yes, you can kind of see like the little bit.
Yeah. Wait. So, that's Isis. Oh, here. So, this is Isis. Just to show you, they were worshiping an Egyptian cult. Coming here, look at what's sitting in her lap. Anna, what do you see sitting in the lap? That would have been a baby. Isn't that strange? It looks just like the pictures, all of you, of the Virgin Mary and Jesus. It's because this This is what they changed it to. They just named the names differently. You guys have no idea what you're involved in. You're doing the same thing the pagans did 2,000 years ago. This is not what the Bible ever said. There's no truth in this. We're trying to help you. The river, the great river Euphrates, is drying up. We're trying to help wake you guys up before it's too late. There's another Artemis, but we're looking for Apollo. It's got to be. Oh, okay, here we go. Here's Apollo. Does he have his bow? But this would have been Artemis's brother right here. You've got Apollo and you have Artemis over there. Both of them, brother and sister. Brother and sister. Artemis was the goddess of the moon. Apollo was the god of the sun. They both have bows and arrows. We're trying to help wake you up here for a reason. That's Asclepius. So this would have been the god for the doctors. In a place like Pergamon, this would have been the big temple they had, you know, the snakes and everything, the rod of Asclepius. That's the doctor's god or demon. That's how they would have called him. Helios? Well, that would have been pretty. Yeah. Here's a statue of Helios from Perg. Another god of the sun.
And that's how the statues were found.
Buried. If you read the book of Isaiah, you'll understand why he says, you know, Bel bows and Nebo stoops, you know. It's the oxes can't handle the burden. These are fake gods. That's all demons are. They're imaginary things. It's not the real God of the Bible. That's all Jesus Christ was talking about. It's all the Apostle Paul was talking about when he said, we know there's no other God but one, and an idol, a demon, is nothing in this world. It's just some man's imagination. And the technology that they used at the time to build it. People obviously don't worship this stuff nowadays. These are in museums for a reason. The technology improved.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
For a reason. The technology improved. The stories got better. Right? But here's what we really want to show you. This is what Artemis really was, right? Purge. This is disc with the zodiac. And when you read, which Anna, would you mind getting a picture of this so we can cut it in? Yeah? Take a good picture of this right here so we can read it later. Because I'm making a point here. That was high technology, and it all, you see the zodiac on it, and you see Artemis and the sun and the moon. And this was the high technology at the time, and this was the science. Or this would have been, back in that day and age, this would have been the computer that they used, you know, to calculate things, the seasons. That's why Jesus Christ called them hypocrites. He said, you can discern that there's clouds coming, and a hot wind is blowing, and you know there's going to be rain. I'm paraphrasing, but you can't discern the signs of the times you're in. That's what worshiping your hands, worshiping the works of a man, that's what it does. It blinds you to the truth that's all around you.
So Laplace's demon was named after Pierre-Simon Laplace, a French mathematician and astronomer. The term Laplace's demon is a retrospective label that was brought up all the way in the 1920s. Laplace called it an intelligence. Science had made great progress, in particular with the laws of motion. We pretty much knew, velocity, time, inertia, mass. And Laplace wondered, well, if you know the laws of motion and you know where every particle in the world is at one time, then you can potentially put those two things together and be able to predict the future. And you can also know the past. So a person who knows these two things can potentially know absolutely everything in the world. Laplace's demon was extremely important and motivated Charles Babbage to create some of the first computers. It inspired Ada Lovelace to actually wonder if one could ever build a computer that could think. Maybe we can build a computer that's practically indistinguishable from a human.
See, this would have been a big gaming computer at the time. This is a game board from that time. It's all in stone. It's pretty neat, right? Mm-hmm. See, nothing's changed. That was, here we go. This is the really big stuff. There's Hera. So that would have been the Greek goddess Hera. Again, another demon, imaginary god. We're trying to help you guys here. Here, oh, look at that. Hermes. Yeah. This would have been the god of thieves, if I'm not mistaken, money. What else? Hermes was a god of? It's like what the Catholics would call a patron saint of these particular things. Okay. These are the emperors. They had their statues too. See, they were made into gods. That's what they were having them worship in these places. They made statues out of them, just like the demons, the imaginary gods. Yeah. They made the man into a god, right? That was Trajan. So this would have been Hadrian's father. And the reason we're doing all of this is, as I just read a few minutes ago, this stuff wasn't even visible or available prior to their beginning to excavate it in 1946. There's no way.
Hermes, he considered the protector of human heralds, travelers, thieves, merchants, and raiders. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, merchants, bankers.
Interesting how they all in the same group, thieves and merchants.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's pretty fun. So this would have been a really fancy tomb, or sarcophagus, I guess, casket. Yeah. This is what Jesus was saying about the Pharisees. He said, outside, the sepulchres that you look on the outside like this, but on the inside you're full of dead people, dead men's bones. This is what he would have been talking about, this kind of stuff. This would have been a really big one, really fancy one right here. This is from Purge. Yeah. See the bull? Here you go. This is from Purge as well. This is what is called the Hercules sarcophagus, I guess. Would have been all of the different, poses of him. You see he's got, there's, is that the head of Medusa?
Well, that's some kind of snake.
Yeah, it's got to be the head of Medusa, right? Yeah, it's head
There's
of Medusa.
A lion.
There's a lion, yeah.
There's I think it's
it's a boar. It's the boar.
Boar, yeah. This is kind of like a
Pegasus.
Horse.
No, looks almost like a giraffe.
Yeah, looks like a giraffe.
It does, doesn't it? There he is with a griffin. We're trying to show you all of this stuff, guys.
Well, this is with a camel.
Yeah, there.
Like
this is what Paul was talking about, demons, right here. They're nothing to be afraid of, unless you think there's something to them. It was just people's imaginations. The scary thing is people don't believe in this silly stuff now. The demons have changed. Yeah? It's just new lies that people believe. That's what gets them killed. We're trying to make a point here. It's nothing supernatural. If there was anything supernatural to any of the stuff Paul was talking about here, these things wouldn't be sitting in a museum 2,000 years later. They're in a museum for a reason, because exactly what we're told in the Psalms, that the people that make these gods, little g, are just like them. They're dead. There's no life in any of this. It's imaginary stuff made by people's hands. The demons have changed today. It's just more advanced technology. They're using electricity, pretend to give, an appearance of life to the very same idols that they would have been building 2,000 years ago. They don't do this stuff anymore. Technology's better.
So I do hope that by looking again at a very detailed history of artificial intelligence, going back to the 1950s with Turing and in 1960s with Oliver Selfridge, and these creatures that we have always thought of as little entities that can bend or break the laws of nature, continue to be very useful in very common ways in order to push the boundaries of science and technology. By reference to this term, we can get a little bit more of a better grasp to what is it about AI that needs to be feared, that is sort of demonic, and what about it is part of our tradition of working and building technologies that have the attributes of these creatures that we've always been fascinated with.
Again, if there was anything to any of their gods, there wouldn't be a giant hole in this person's sarcophagus that was supposed to give them rest forever, wouldn't be sitting in a museum. There, and it all changes in the Byzantine era. Yeah, you see, they just moved. Yeah, changed the sculptures. And there's one, same people make the same stuff to Michael. I think this is, no, that's Gabriel, actually. Yeah, there you go. 6th century. Relief for the Archangel Gabriel. Another thing, you notice tombstones? They haven't changed much for thousands of years for a reason. These people just change the names of stuff. They never, ever really believed, the people making this stuff, what the Bible was saying. Ever. That's why you guys have been blinded, because you're listening to people that make stuff like this and listening to them like they're the experts. They're dead. Exactly what David says in the Psalms, the people that make them are just like them. They're dead. That's why they don't know what's going on.
Did you see this?
I wish we could have went upstairs because they had the...
Well, we'll maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, by the way, guys, it's Storos, and regardless of how much they try to convince you otherwise, there's a 4-corner of the earth, kind of reason that they made that. He was crucified on a stake. That was the Roman word for it at the time. It's not a cross. Not what they're telling me, at least. Storos, that was the name. Here's Aurelia Paulina, 2nd century. Notice anything familiar? These temple priests and priestesses, they look a lot like Catholic and Orthodox nuns for a reason. Yeah, there you go. There's the 3 graces. This would have been, was this Artemis here? Is that who that is? Yeah, it's Artemis. You see the bow right there in the hand? Yeah, and there's the moon. So again, guys, what we're telling you, her brother, the counterpart, Apollo, is with the sun. Oh, there's the laurel wreath, and there's the angel. This would have been the goddess Victoria, or the angel Victoria, handing the laurel wreath over This all had meaning to the people that ran the places. The simpler people that didn't know any better, they were lied to and tricked into thinking there was life in it.